G'day, and welcome to my review for Penumbra Overture. Now, this game is an interesting mix of genres, and while it's hard to mistake this game for anything other than a survival horror game, it still holds strong to its adventure gaming roots. There is also a strong stealth aspect to this game, and it is this aspect that is one of the game's more genius game design decisions, which combined with its unique gameplay really elevates this game from a curiosity to a must-play title. Now, hardcore adventure game fans may find the gameplay a little removed from the classical adventure games, and there was some controversy when this game was released, as it was actually marketed to adventure gamers. Still, all that nerd rage and other wank that surrounded this game just doesn't interest me in the slightest. What interests me is that this game is simply fantastic, no matter what genre you assign to it. So while it is true that Penumbra is not a classic adventure game, I personally believe that developers spent a lot of time bringing this title back from the heavy action orientation we have come to know in recent survival horror titles, making the game a lot more accessible to adventure game fans. This game, for example, feels a lot more like Zork Nemesis than it does like Biohazard. It is important to remember that survival horror games themselves are originally an offshoot from the classic adventure games. Like adventures, they have not really changed much from the glorious day that Alone in the Dark redefined what an adventure game could be. This game was so groundbreaking that it founded an entire subgenre, survival horror, though it wasn't until 1996, 4 years after Alone in the Dark, that the term survival horror was even coined, by of course the most famous of this game type, which is Biohazard, or more commonly known in the West as Resident Evil. Some modern gamers might not see the connection between survival horror and adventure games, as survival horror was established when they started playing, though I believe anyone that played these games during and through the birth of survival horror, the progression and surviving similarities to adventure games are pretty hard to ignore. They are both heavily story-driven. A major aspect to both is the exploration of the game world. They both contain item puzzles and inventories and puzzle box puzzles. The stories usually contain some kind of grand mystery to uncover, and until recently, survival horror was often always portrayed in third-person perspective. Still, it is true that they have separated into unique genres, mainly from the growth of an included action element, and over time, the survival horror has gone more and more into action-orientated gameplay, and the original adventure game elements themselves have started to diminish. So while die-hard adventure game fans loved Alone in the Dark, by the time Biohazard 5 came out, the majority of these players have given up the genre to the action gamers. Anyway, Penumbra is a survival horror game. You cannot really argue that it's not, though it has taken a step back, as in a step back to the original survival horror roots, which are of course adventure games themselves. There is no real action in this game. While I have read that some people have acted more aggressively while playing, I personally never once engaged in combat during the entire game, and I believe that stealth was the predicted gameplay that the designers were aiming for, and it is this stealth aspect that really makes this game stand out as something special. You see, when we experience a game, there is only so much the game can simulate. There are aspects to human nature that are simply not possible for a game to provoke in us. While a good story can make us relate to and imagine almost anything, say love for example, we do not physically experience love ourselves. Then gaming technology started to take off, and it wasn't long before it was realised that the first-person perspective allowed gamers to experience the game world in a much more personal way, opening up the possibility, among other things, to physically scare the players. The concept of using player death as a tool to use the player's own annoyance at having to save and reload all the time or lose XP or whatever was well known and widely used as a device to translate the real human hesitations and worries from the players themselves to the game characters, making it seem as if in the game the character itself was scared. But this was a new idea. In this idea, the game player was the game character. This was very different. It was all about placing the player in the game, and it opened up an entire new way to experience a game world. For example, a comedic game can make you physically laugh. That is to say, experience, in reality, an emotional response. Far more natural than an intellectual, empathic response of understanding what the game is talking about, like say, a love story. Well, in the same way, games now had the ability to just literally scare the pants off you. And I'm not talking about, oh, I understand that this is a scary story. I'm talking about, I have got to stop playing this game and turn the lights on right now. And Penumbra is just masterful at this. I really rank this game as one of the most generally frightening games I've ever played. And again, I'm not talking about jump scares here either, as in lots of silence and then suddenly a loud noise and something jumps out at you like in Doom 3. I'm talking about a crafted environment, audio design, level design, and gameplay mechanics that all combine, without gore I might add, and without excessive violence, to deliver a tremendously spooky game. This is achieved through a variety of things, but most impressive and worthy of note is the way that the player interacts with the game itself. While most games use a system of button controls to command the character to take actions, like to open a door you press a button and the game character will then open any doors within its reach. This game utilises, as far as I'm aware, a unique game interface that relies on quite a decent physics engine. You literally reach into the game world with the mouse and move objects just as you would in real life. Like to open a door, you actually grab it with the mouse and then you drag your mouse to open the door. To break a bottle, you need to pick it up with the mouse and then do a quick movement to throw it against the wall. See, as we talked about, scary games work only if you feel as if you're part of the game world, as if you are literally inside it. And this way of interacting with the game world by physically reaching in through the monitor and grabbing and pushing stuff about just strengthens that bond of the game's reality to the player. I mean, I just cannot say enough great things about this interface. Still, even so, there are some minor problems with the immersion in this game, and they're very minor, so minor that you probably wouldn't even mention them, except that this game is so good. Basically, there are cut sequences at the start, there are text descriptions of the characters' inner thoughts, as well as objects that you are looking at with the look command, along with some time jumps and location jumping. The point is that these serve to distance you from the player in the game, slightly disconnecting you from the feeling that you are actually the game character in the game and not controlling the game character, who is actually someone else. It's a subtle but incredibly important difference, and it is games that make you feel as if you are part of the game world, as if you are actually in it, are the ones that are the scariest. And this game is terrific at it, but there are these small flaws that slightly disconnect you from the game's reality, and it's a real shame, and I really hope that in future games from this company they address that issue. Speaking of the company itself, it's important to remember that this was made by a really small dev team, working on the game after their paid work is over, with no office, just set up in their house. I mean, this is a real achievement for an indie game development team. To not only nail a gaming genre so well, they also practically invented a new user control system. I mean, it's really a great achievement. Though, because they are a dev team of this size, there are the normal associated problems that come with small yet ambitious indie games. The physics engine, for example, while very competent, does have some problems. Like here, for example, you can see I'm trying to pull this cupboard down, but it kind of gets stuck halfway in the air, and that disconnects you from the reality of the game. And while the graphics do look great and suit the style of game perfectly, after a while you start to wish for some more variety and some more spectacular art. Still, considering the amount of people they had working on this game, I think it's a pretty damn decent effort. I've seen a lot of indie games do far, far less. Another fantastic little game design tidbit in this is that the character can panic if he looks at the monsters. So while you're sneaking around, you hide, right? And you're sitting there trying to wait for the monster to walk past, but you can't actually look at the monster because you panic and then blow your cover. While that sounds a little bit annoying, it's actually brilliant game design, because you know all the sound effects are around, the monsters around, and you naturally of course want to look at it, but you can't, and you're sort of peeking around corners and ducking away when the monster comes close to you. It's very, very atmospheric, and I would strongly recommend this game to anybody who's looking for something that is more than just a standard adventure, because it's pretty much a normal adventure game. You explore, you use items, you solve puzzles, but this game is just terrifying. I cannot stress it enough. I mean, this is a scary game. Just turn down your lights, turn your sound right up, or get some headphones so you don't wake your kids or something, except for maybe when you scream. But I mean, seriously, I mean, this game is really scary and incredibly fun. Like, I just could not get enough of it, and I would strongly recommend it to anyone who's looking for something a little bit different, but yet still not an action game. Thanks for watching.